Hello everyone, this is Serious Trivia, and today Total War 3 Kingdoms got its patch 1.7.1 beta update, so we're going to be covering everything in this patch note in a rundown video. And the first thing we have to note is that this is a live beta, so you do have to opt in your Steam library to get this beta update active in your game. And I will actually not be doing this for a while in my own game, so I have not actually tested out the beta myself. And the reason being is that there is a big map change included in this patch. So I'm actually a bit worried that it will break my current campaign. So I'm going to be updating this through the beta opt-in after I finish my current campaign, and you might want to consider the same thing. Now, if you want to test out if it will break your campaign or not, definitely give it a shot by backing up your save and opting into this patch beta, and then testing out your campaign. If it doesn't work, just revert out of the beta and you should be fine. The big change on the map is this change to Mount Song, which is Songshan, and Hulao Pass, which is connected to Songshan. And also there's going to be more impassable areas on the Yellow River during the strait area moving into the sea to make some of these passes more impassable. So right now, for example, some of the passes to the north around Henei and Shangdang can just be bypassed by sailing on the Yellow River. And same thing to Hulao Pass, which is going to be on the south bank. And now we're going to get more impassable areas similar to what we had around the bend around Sihe to kind of force you to land, do a fight, and then pop back into the river. Now, these are highly requested changes in the Chinese community, at least. I understand that out west, in the English forums, not many people care about the location of Mount Song and Hulao Pass, but this is actually probably the most requested change by the Chinese community, which is actually a bit shocking, because if you go to any of CA's videos, whenever they updated, let's say, Fates Divided Introduction, the number one comment that's going to be thrown out there is Hulao Gate change win, Mount Song being moved win. It's kind of like people asking for Medieval 3 win out in the west. So this is highly demanded, and they kind of changed the location for that crowd, even though I was expecting this to be changed in the expansion pack later this year, because usually you get a huge map update in the expansion pack. But they're fixing it, so it's nice. Now, in terms of where they're going to move this, they're going to move this a bit west of where it currently stands. Right now, it's a mountain range in between the Inchuan Commandery, between the capital and the farmland. It's probably going to shift west at the gates of the Great Wall, with the pass choking up the point between the Yellow River and the Great Wall area. And that's going to be more accurate geographically. Songshan is pretty much slightly southeast of Luoyang, so that's pretty much where it's going to go. It's still not going to be like 100% accurate, because the mountain and the pass does not hold up the whole area between the Yellow River. Songshan is actually a little bit far from the Yellow River, but for game purposes and the reason that we want these passes, they're probably going to put it closer to the Yellow River than it really should be. And Songshan is a great place. It's one of the Wuyue Mountains, and for those of you who are interested in martial arts, Songshan is where also you will find Shaolin Temple, the official Shaolin Temple. It's in Songshan, so great place to visit. And now, due to this change, some faction introduction videos as the flyby videos will experience some graphical glitch, and this is something we're aware of and will fix during the beta release. So since this is currently beta, they do have to go back in and fix some of the stuff that they made during the launch of the base game, such as these flybys, and they have to change how the camera is moved. That's a minor thing. And then we have a bunch of bug fixes. So I think the point of these 0.1 patches is to fix everything that was broken or introduced in the 0.0 patches. And we got a few things that got adjusted. There's a few balance changes, but most of the changes I have seen are actually design changes or bug fixes that kind of caused the unintended imbalance in the game. And one thing for sure is many people complaining about the frequency of looters being spawned in the far fringe areas, especially the northwest, where if you control commanderies such as Wu Wei, you're going to get looters every season. And you're going to have to deal with this full stack of very powerful units with very high level generals every season. And that's very hard to deal with. By every season, I mean summer season, right after the spring faction council turn. So they're reducing that, making these far fringe areas a little bit easier to hold and defend. And that's a nice change, although I didn't mind it. I think this is a case of, be careful what you wish for. I think many people have given CA ideas in the past saying that these edge of the map areas are a bit too safe. Once you control them, you never had to defend them. And now we have Faction Council. And that's causing issues, of course. But I think the main issue here with Faction Council, which is something I'm currently experiencing in my own Total War gameplay, well, this is Total War gameplay where I'm declaring war against everyone, is the particular proposal where it burns through all the supplies of a given commandery, reserves by supplies, for 6 turns. And it's not a numerical reduction, it's just depletion. So even if you build buildings that will give you more reserves, whether it's military infrastructure or, God forbid, grain storage, you can't counteract that. There is no counterplay to that. And when you have 0 reserves for the next 6 seasons, you will lose huge chunks of public order. You also lose huge chunk of population per turn. I believe it's 80k population loss per turn. And that really just reduces your cities to 0 population. And that happens way too often. I'm pretty much getting hit with that every single year. And it's kind of discouraging me from even trying to maintain public order, just because I know I cannot maintain the population. There's really no counterplay to minus 80k population a turn. So that's also something I think they need to look into for future balance changes to Faction Council. Now, this is probably the second most requested change after the release of Faith Divided. That Hulao Gate one has been there since they changed the map for the first time. But this one in particular, many people felt the immersion was broken. When you restore the Han, but your faction stays whatever your faction was, with the same flag, with the same name. Now we get to all play as the Han Empire if we restore the Han, and the flag will be changed to Han Empire. That's a pretty neat change and something that was easy. I was fully expecting them to make this change on this patch, not something hard to do on their side, and a big improvement for player experience on our side. Then we have another very interesting balance change. So this one's in response to the fact that for most AI factions, Imperial favor stays 100 pretty much throughout the game. You have to be a pretty bad faction, whether that's Yuan Shu or Ma Teng. Those two in particular are the ones that I've seen have trouble maintaining public order or just maintaining Imperial favor in general, and are often casted as enemy of the Han. But for everyone else, everyone pretty much stays 100. Now that's going to be very different because we no longer get Imperial favor from maintaining positive public order, and the food-based gains are adjusted down, which is what I'm assuming they mean by adjust some food-based gains. And that's great because let's take a campaign that I'm currently playing, the co-op campaign that I'm playing with Mr. Smart Donkey. I did not expand very much. The only real expansion I did is take Chang'an away from Dongzhuo to save the emperor. And I got hit with a huge Imperial favor penalty for taking the capital of the Han, of Dongzhuo's faction. Meanwhile, my co-op partner has been expanding throughout the entire Central Plains, and also just taking land from all these Han factions. But when the Imperial favor became activated in 197, I was at 40 points. he was at 100 points because he was able to maintain a huge food surplus because he's playing as Cao Cao and taking over so much land, and maintaining a decent public order in most of his land. So he was actually counteracting all his expansion throughout 190 to 187. So despite the fact that he took probably 3 times as much land as I did, he had 100 points of imperial favor. And I think that's a reflection that the game wants to fix. Pretty much if you are at war and taking Han territory, killing Han citizens or troops, you're going to lose imperial favor. There's no amount of good, control of public order that's going to fix that. Although this does bring up another issue. So I personally like to farm rebels, and each commander right now with negative 100 or negative public order is costing you 1 point of imperial favor per turn. It's not huge, but if you're running a huge empire and you're farming rebels, which is a bit more difficult, but something that can be done, you're going to lose quite a big chunk of imperial favor per turn. That's still here, I'm guessing, because it says remove imperial favor gains from public order or positive public order. They didn't say remove negative losses from negative, right? So okay, so I guess they are still gonna keep the part where it discourages you from farming. I guess that's a good change. Yeah, I guess that's a good change. We'll have to see how this plays out. Hopefully, the AI factions will have a harder time maintaining 100 points of imperial favor, and you get more of a chaotic feel from this implementation. I'm sure we'll see other adjustments in the future. This is probably not the only balance change we'll see. Then we have another pretty big requested. I think I actually mentioned this when I was doing the preview, is that Liu Biao lost too much land. They didn't even give him his capital, Xiangyang, in the 200 start. That was given away. So it's nice to see that it's given back. I think it was given away to Zhang Xiu's faction, which does not make sense. I mean, Zhang Xiu's uncle, Zhang Ji, tried to take Xiangyang and died in the siege, and then Liu Biao took in Zhang Xiu to take care of some of the border territories. So as a vassal faction to Cao Cao at this point, having Xiangyang given to him wouldn't really make any historical sense at all, and Xiangyang being Liu Biao's capital in the Jin province, it's nice to see that he got it back. And then we got this friend relationship added between Mi Zhu, Sun Qian, and Liu Bei. So these two are basically secretaries of Liu Bei. Mi Zhu is also a brother-in-law, and we have the family relation finally established between Lady Mi, Mi Zhu, and Mi Feng. So these two are brothers and sisters, and we basically have a friendship. I think this will help with their starting relationship, as in satisfaction, because you now have friends with the leader as a bonus, and also some family bonuses added in because Lady Mi will be married to Liu Bei in the 200 start, and then you have 2 additional family members. This will encourage you to probably keep these guys and also help you build unity, which I expect to see a rework in a future DLC, because right now in 200, unity is very useless since there is no Han Empire land. Although now I actually wonder what happens when you restore the Han and you're called the Han Empire and Liu Bei actually use unity to take your land. That would be a very interesting interaction. But something that we probably have to test out. I mean, I'm sure it's something that they can fix quite easily. And then we have another Jotai Nerf. So Jotai has been nerfed twice. The first nerf that he had was probably warranted because he was just gaining health every second, even if he dies, which gives him an incredible delegate value that was breaking the game. And also you see duels where he gets his head chopped off, but he stands back up and fight. Now, he is getting a heal based on percent max health every second, which is actually interesting because they claim this is 5 times slower than before, which I understand probably is true. But now you can probably mess with his max health to kind of make this better. It's not going to be as good as before, I'm sure, but Jotai's power comes from the fact that if he has speed, he can just run away from the conflict, kite out of the conflict, and then heal up and then get back into the fight. And he can probably solo an entire army that way. Now, obviously, this makes him weaker, and this is probably what makes him the weakest. His ability is a passive ability once you activate it, which is kind of weird because it used to be pure passive, but to work around some of the coding in terms of checking for Oathorn being alive, it made it an active ability that you activate, and then it becomes a passive gain. So it was kind of broken in that if you gave him an elephant, he can still use the skill because the game was treating it as a passive ability, and the elephant disabled all active abilities. So putting Jotai on an elephant that cannot cause him to get knocked off of, because spear units can knock him off his horse but cannot knock him off his elephant, means he can just trample the enemy for the whole round. And that was very broken, also very fun. I think we did that in 2 campaigns. That seems to be no longer available because he can no longer have his passive heal when he's on the elephant. So there goes that playstyle. But still, if it's too broken, I guess if you can have one guy on elephant soloing any army, you might as well take that out. Lastly, another balance change that was caused by the Fates Divided DLC was that if you are a governor faction, you hit the king rank, you have the emperor, you are not automatically hitting the emperor rank because you don't get a emperor seat spawned for you. Therefore, you cannot trigger the restore option. And by the time you do get emperor seat, the emperor is gone because he needs to be restored at the king rank. So now the governors, the ones who are technically most likely to restore the Han, can actually restore the Han. So that's a very nice change. Then we have a bunch of crash fixes and bug fixes. So we'll go through these much more quickly. Yellow Turban apparently, when annexing their territory as the Han, they could crash your game. When extracting a spy when leading an army, could crash the game. You could also be annexing settlements, and amount of action points remaining to the army annexing could cause a crash to the game. You could cause a crash when zooming in on a besieged settlement. So basically these are possible crashes to your game. They've been looked at and they've been fixed. Yellow Turban rebellions can no longer be invited to join Empire. So that's something that I have experienced against the AI, where Gongdu's faction somehow is part of the Empire. They're fixing that, basically taking away that diplomacy option for them. Postponed restore the Han dilemma until Emperor Xian is an adult to make sure he could not become faction leader when still a child. Oh, wow. So this is the case where you hit Emperor rank so fast that it's not even 197 yet. Well, first off, that's very impressive. Okay, I can see how this is a case that they didn't test out. But now they're delaying the restore option until he becomes an adult in 197. Interesting. They removed multiple Black Mountain hideout buildings in the 194 campaign, so apparently you can build multiple for Zhang Yan's faction in 194. That would be nice, because this building actually has some nice bonuses. Fixed issue where if a faction in Alliance left it, Alliance peace would be automatically signed, but one faction would remain in Alliance war and be unable to leave it. Yeah, Alliance war is always very tricky. They've been trying to tweak this for a few patches now. Fixed issue where trade territory function was not always working correctly. I think all you had to do is close out the menu and then redo it, but glad that it's fixed. Fixed issue where it's possible to annex territory of a faction who have left your empire. So this has to do more with Liu Hong's ability, where nothing happens if you attack a vassal of a member of your empire. The correct diplomacy pop-up now occurs. Okay. So vassal of a subject, basically. That's pretty interesting. Fixed issue where player will get into 2 pop-up messages if the target of a mercenary contract is vassalized by... Yes, so this is something I have experienced after the patch. So if you have a mercenary contract, you get the notification twice. Not a big deal, but still. Faction which is fulfilling a mercenary contract is vassalized. The contract now ends and the mission will expire the following turn. So this is also a nice quality of life change. So perhaps you're attacking someone for the contract and they get vassalized. So now the contract just ends, not giving. So basically, since you have to kind of peace out, or else the option will be you have to go to war with whoever vassalized them just to continue to attack them. So that's a nice change. Because most likely the person who gave you the contract is going to peace out because they got vassalized and the person can coordinate a peace between the factions. Fix the issue where the vassals do not always have access to the option to request permission to declare war from their vassal master. Oh dear. If this was an issue for the AI, that means expect more wars to be caused by vassals of AIs getting their master involved in wars. That could be, I mean, it's a fix, but cause some pains in campaigns. Non-man rebels can now no longer do any diplomatic treaties beyond war. This will only apply to new campaigns. Interesting. So they're gonna make the rebels be even more simplified in terms of diplomacy. Basically, you can only peace and war with them. Okay, I mean they're going for the very Stone Age feel of the non-man rebels, so I guess that's fine. And vassalizing a non-man faction through settlement occupation option as non-man faction will now correctly sign peace with that faction. So this was the reason why I was not going to play a Shamwoke campaign, because you could vassalize them with the final settlement, and then they would still be at war with you. And that would just break his mechanics, so now that's fixed. Fixed issue where non-man diplomacy options with the Han faction were not always working correctly. I mean, now it's always going to be war and peace, right? So I guess it's not going to be too much of a big deal. Fixed issue where demand fealty for non-man wasn't correctly unlocking the option to vassalize Han factions. Okay, so this is a later reform thing. But okay, glad it's fixed. Fixed issue where Yellow Turban faction were sometimes not progressing and therefore not gaining access to more diplomatic treaties. So this is kind of the opposite problem compared to non-man, where if you ascend in terms of faction rank, as Yellow Turban, you do unlock quite a bit of diplomatic treaties, which apparently now you can't join Empire still, but you can do other things. So now it's correctly functioning, because I know for some factions it worked quite well. Like Gongdu usually, if he makes it to the late game, have access to pretty much all the diplomatic options. But not bad. Fixed issue where Dongzhuo incorrectly have access to Liu Hong's specific diplomatic option to annex Empire subjects. Okay, so this is basically Dongzhuo taking over in 182 for the Empire, and then still retaining some of the functionalities of Liu Hong's faction. They fixed actually quite a bit of things related to Dongzhuo's 182 start, which makes it probably more playable, because I've been shying away from playing it. But it is a very nice start, because you do start out in the west, you shift to the Central Plains, and you're also a lot younger. Now with a couple fixes, maybe we'll tackle that in the future. Yu Jin was leaving Cao Cao on turn 1 on Legendary 194 due to satisfaction issues. They probably just did something to make the satisfaction work out so he doesn't leave automatically on turn 1. They moved the ping for Emperor Xian to Xuchang because we requested during the preview period to move Cao Cao's capital to Xuchang to have the Emperor there, but the ping was made, they forgot to move the ping. Now it's being changed. Liang rebels in Medieval Heaven are no longer affected by Imperial favor, so they're not being treated as a Han faction, which is pretty much correct. Han Empire factions like Liu Hong, led by a current/former emperor, now gets a boost to Imperial favor. Oh, that's a neat bonus. I mean, it makes sense. Like, you must love yourself before you love others. You're the one giving Imperial favor, so you should always get a boost. That's nice. Northern Army veteran units now have unit caps. So this is a change that was much needed because the basic unit had 3 cap, and now the veteran unit, I'm guessing, probably will get 3 cap too. So your army will be consisted of 3 basic ones and 3 veteran ones. Whereas before, the veteran units was uncapped, and the basic unit was capped at 3. So you just go ahead and recruit, 6 veteran units and forget about the cap 3 units. So now they're capping both. Now the exploit to get past the cap will probably still work. You could probably hire 3 veteran units, have them get killed in battle, so they're on the cooldown to remuster, and then you can recruit 3 more. So you still can get 6 units of the very best type, but now you have to use the exploit to do that, whereas the game design limits you to probably 3 of veteran units, 3 of basic units. That's my guess. I have not tested the beta. Maybe they changed the numbers. Alright, fixed many instances of characters appearing in 200 campaign who should already be dead. Yes, that is something they should look into. Every time they move forward the chapter pack, they have to look at the character pool of who can spawn and make sure it's not past when they are supposed to be dead already. Fixed issue where Liu Xie with his unique art could be born to any character. I have not seen this, but that's a very neat thing happening. Suddenly your faction gives birth to someone and it's like the Emperor with his unique art. That would be kind of cool, but not possible anymore. Jun You can correctly access all skills in his tree, which enables him to gain access to his Turning the Tide ability. Apparently there was something bugged about his tree, not letting him to progress past a certain point. Sadly, I have not noticed this in any of my runs, but now it's fixed. Lu Bu's personal victory momentum, they updated the text, so it was working like this, but they just didn't change the text explaining it. Whereas on launch, it was forcing you to make duels. But then many people said that people would not duel you, so you cannot get the bonuses, so it's actually dueling or just defeating them in battle. Now it will say that correctly in the text when you hover over it. The Tail Sister should now always trigger for Sun Ce apparently, or it was broken where it would not trigger for some campaigns. We were fairly lucky in this regard too when we played Sun Ce where we didn't have an issue with this, but I know other people have been telling me that they were not able to get the Tail Sister event. It should trigger somewhere around 200, so now it should work. Fixed issue where if the Emperor is executed by a non-Han faction, a duplicate Liu Xie would spawn. This is leftover code from before about the former Emperor when he was a generic character. That's probably removed. The Iron General. This is something actually a lot of people in my Discord channel was asking for because this is the only title in the game that was not spawning correctly. I think it requires you to fight some defensive sieges, but now it should actually unlock for you. This was the only one that was not unlocking. Fixed issue where when Nanman children are born, they would steal one weapon and one mount from the faction's available pool. So this is a very interesting phenomenon, and this probably explains why I was losing items when I was basically removing them from, let's say, Wu Tugu or some other general with a nice weapon, is that the kids are actually taking them when they're being born. Which is also maybe an explanation for why the Nanman rebels end up with most of the gold weapons in the game, because they're taking from the pool of available weapons to be crafted, is my guess, and that's actually quite an interesting phenomenon. But I wonder after this fix, do we still see Nanman rebels with the gold weapons? Anyways, it's a interesting, behind the scene look to see why the code works the way they are and why we see certain things in the game. But it's nice that's fixed. At least you won't be losing weapons and mounts when playing as Nanman factions when giving birth. Shan Yue in the 200 start. This is a faction that's starting down south around Cangwu. Shan Yue refers to people who will stop paying taxes and join the mountain Yue people. And they're now set to bandit culture. They were set to bandit culture, but they had Han units. Now it's bandit culture plus bandit units, which would have them correct, basically. It's a very minor AI faction in the south. Fixed issue, we're playing as Dongzhuo. Right, I was mentioning this. Dongzhuo sometimes did not have Lu Bu join the player due to a break in the event chain in Mandate of Heaven, which is the reason why I was not interested in playing him, because you end up with characters that you want to have, but you don't get them because the event chain breaks. And now this is fixed, so we might see a Dongzhuo campaign in the future. And it's nice to see that they're still trying to fix a lot of the Mandate of Heaven bugs, because there's quite a few of them. Corrected unlock conditions for Neutral's Trophy, 15 spear units, but they were only being tested for pike infantry. Rice paddies were not providing food production as farming for bandits. Fixed issue, increase in spy slots were not being applied unless campaigns saved and reloaded. Fixed issue where Imperial units were not being unlocked correctly by technologies in the 8 Princes campaign. This is also a nice fix for 8 Princes if we should do a records mode run in that in the future. And this is the big change. If you didn't play it yet, don't opt into the beta. You can have a ridiculous economy playing as Liu Yan or Liu Zhang because they incorrectly made their tier 6 settlements or the large cities give a faction-wide bonus to commerce instead of a local commandery bonus. So that was causing our playthrough. If you're curious, go check out my Liu Yan playthrough, where I had every single city or Han city built to a large city, and I was getting about 4,000% to commerce income throughout the entire faction. And you can imagine the income that was bringing in the late game with this build-up. But that's fixed because obviously this is a incorrect implementation. They were trying to add faction-wide aspiration starting on large city. You are going to get 2 points of aspiration for your whole faction starting at rank 6. And instead, they probably changed the conditional statement for the commerce, which was, your own commandery, to faction-wide as well when implementing this change to aspiration. And that probably caused this issue, which was quite fun to play as. A little bit of reward for our all trade-off campaign there in the beginning. And then there's a few battle fixes where several settlement maps were covered in Caltrap ground type. Wow. Which map were these? I would love to see them. I would imagine you take damage and you're also slowed. Never saw this happen in any of my campaigns, but that would be something. Fixed issue where Yu Jin had different ability in custom battle to campaign. Okay. Fixed issue where several characters unrelated to Yuan Shao had familial conflict ability and added to Yuan Shu. Okay, so to be fair, the person I think they're talking about is Yuan Huan, who is the first person you fight as Cao Cao in many of the campaign starts, especially in 190. Now, Yuan Huan, although not directly related to Yuan Shao and Yuan Shu, does come from the same Yuan clan before the two split. So Yuan Shao's clan is the Runan Yuan clan, but there are really just a cadet branch from the main Yuan clan line, which Yuan Huan belongs to. So it's not entirely off that he should get familial conflict, but apparently they don't want that, which I can understand because it's not directly on the same family tree. Yuan Shao, Yuan Shu are technically brothers, same father, different mother, and then Yuan Shao got adopted by his uncle, so they're technically cousins, but they're on the same family tree. So I wonder, did they add this to Yuan Anyang, Yuan Shu's daughter? Because I think she didn't have it. But if they do add this, it's kind of nice. So I guess Yuan Shu now has a unique skill. Still some love for him, I guess. Fixed issue where faces of Nanman units could appear black at certain angles and lightings. Okay. Fixed issue where some already researched texts in the Nanman tech tree were not being displayed correctly. Fixed issue where player would get a notification pop up about Imperial intrigue before the feature was active. Ooh. Okay, so it's now going to be in the background, I'm wondering? Because I know it still affects you. So anything you do before 197 can still change what your starting Imperial intrigue is on 197. But now we just won't see it. Fixed issue where first notification for turn does not always pop up. Okay. That's basically you get a list of notifications. The first one doesn't pop up. That could be annoying. Fixed issue where more than 11 administrative positions did not fit into the correct core UI. A scroll bar had been added. That's nice because we're about to hit 15 for our Gongsuzan campaign in the late game. But I'm not opting in. Ooh. Well, maybe they keep the inspectors in a different role, and then we have just 10 administrators. We'll see what happens. Fixed issue where King of Kings UI for Menghuo is not updating with the correct duration. Okay. That's his unique bonus from whenever he vassalize, confederate, or take over one of the fealties. Fixed issue where some character names were shown in lowercase when loading into battles. Okay. Fixed issue where discredit faction was sometimes available in circumstances that were not valid. Ah. Right, so I think the requirement for this is one of the characters in the court must be like below 50. So this fixes the issue where it wouldn't light up. So it was working, right? So basically what this is saying that sometimes you see this one highlighted where you can click it, and then you look at the list of people that you can spy on, and no one's available. So now in that situation, you just don't see this one highlighted, even though you have enough points. So that fixes the, the surprise you get when you click this and you see no one is willing to discredit their faction for you. Remove outdated information on the info overlay for Jotai Nerf shop, the old ones. Fix issue where applicate emperorship diplomatic proposal had wrong description. It wrongly suggested the faction being proposed would be abdicated instead. You're right, that's something you gotta be careful of. And finally, fix issue where start position processing, this is for modders, was not being done correctly. And that's all the changes. And then we have a simplified Chinese version of the changes. But that's a nice list of changes. It's not the biggest patch. I'm surprised they changed the maps. I'm also kind of sad they didn't update any of the background titles. That's something I want to see changed because I've been waiting to make a character tier list, but I guess that has to go on now because we gave them a chance to update some of those background bonuses. Now, as for what else can be changed that's kind of being ignored, I actually want them to clarify if the current espionage system is the one they actually want. Because right now, you cannot perform any spy actions on anyone who's not on the field. So they need to be a general on the field for you to perform a spy action. And that kind of went against what I thought spying was about, at least throughout the game before Faith Divided DLC. Because before you can spy on anyone, including the ones in the court, and that kind of made sense. I mean, why are you only allowed to perform spy actions for those who have armies? After all, requesting to become a general is a spy option in itself. So it's kind of actually limiting how many characters you can steal, because if it's a character that's on the bench and being ignored, they would have the lack of purpose. It'd be easier to work on, but that's something probably they want to take a look into for the future. But overall, the changes are good. Most of these issues that fixed here are good balance changes that were either mistakes that were introduced in the DLC, like this one, with a 50% to faction-wide, or some nice balance changes to new functionalities like Imperial Favor. I'm probably not going to be able to test out this beta for quite a while because I want to finish my Gongsun campaign first because I don't want to mess up the This is Total War run there. So hopefully you guys will test this out, and if you guys see any changes that need to be made, feel free to request them on the forums or just spam them in the comment section on any of my videos, and I'll try to get to them to get them to change it. So hopefully you guys enjoy this, and see you all next time. Bye!